Hi guys, welcome to our podcast called PodCrime. And today I'm here with Navaani Gesu
Hey guys!
and with Lizzy Meisters.
Hello.
So we this podcast contains of three big prolific serial killers called Jeffrey Dahmer.
Ted Bundy.
And John Wayne Gacy.
And today we're gonna discuss their cases and find out why and how they became who they became. So yeah. First of all, we want to thank Mr. Beckers.
Woo!
Thank you for guiding us through our school project. We greatly appreciate your help with guiding us through the project and helping us create our podcast and our research project. Thank you for Mitunant for borrowing your studio so we could record a podcast with great audio quality. And thank you, Vete or Vitarand, for helping us with a respondent for our interviews and driving us to the studio because we are not walking to Heckenbos. Warning. Viewer discretion is advised. This podcast contains rape, murder, sexual assault, physical abuse, emotional abuse, and trauma. Now we're gonna explain you what a serial killer is, so we can start and talk about our serial killers that we chose for this podcast. So first we're gonna explain you what a serial killer is. So a serial killer is an individual who kills 3 or more people with a cooling off period, and the cooling off period that cooling off period is at least a month, and a cooling off period is like a period where you don't kill, so like a space of time where you don't kill. The crimes are committed or completed in similar ways, and the victim may have things in common like their occupation, sex, race, appearance, or age. The motivation of a serial killer is primarily for psychological gratification and may have a sexual element to the cases, so like rape and stuff like that. And now I'm gonna pass the mic to Navaani, and Navaani is gonna explain us why do serial killers kill.
Serial killers receive gratification out of killing someone. They have an overwhelming need to do harm to someone. That need gets so strong that they eventually act on it. Serial killers with a rough upbringing that might have faced abuse, neglect, bullying. Maybe it was a psychotic episode that drove them to the edge. In the other chapters, we will touch on these different factors in detail. Because every killer has another motivation to why they kill.
And now Lizzy is going to explain us the difference between organized serial killers and disorganized serial killers.
So the FBI has categorized serial killers into two different types, which are disorganized killers and organized killers. And I'm first going to start off with explaining to you what a disorganized killer is. This type of killer often has a lot of problems in their life, such as being very bad at socializing, like having zero social skills, or being bad at reading the room. They often do not have a lot of stability in their life. They find it hard to form relationships with people, or just keeping a job or have anything for a long period in their life. They often struggle with mental health, and whenever they like murder someone, they try to personalize their victims and view them as objects, which causes them to kind of not be aware of what they're doing. And now for the organized killer, this person is often very intelligent, unlike the disorganized killer, who's often like kind of stupid, I guess, like low intelligence. So the organized killer is very in touch with society, like very good social skills, very good often at manipulating people. They often are narcissistic. You could say that John Wayne Gacy is an organized killer because he was very manipulative, and often they think out all of the steps before they commit a murder, such as how are they gonna approach the victim, what are they gonna do to kill him, what are they gonna do after, how are they gonna dispose the body, cover up the crime. And then they watch the news very closely to like see if the body gets found, see if the police has any leads on the case. And sometimes they even put themselves into the investigation to hope to get more information and kind of get sort of an alibi to link themselves out of the case. And yeah, they put a lot of effort into it. yeah, as I said, John Wayne Gacy is a very good example of this. He puts a lot of effort into his reputation, um, keeping up with the society and stuff. So yeah, the type organized killer really understands what he is doing. He really knows what he is doing, and in most cases, this type of killer is a, yeah, literally just a psychopath. Now we're gonna pass on the mic to
Tracey!
And I am going to talk about the difference between an organized murder and a disorganized murder. So first, I'm going to talk about a disorganized murder. A disorganized murder is a murder where the killer often performs a blitz attack. A blitz attack is a fast and violent attack. In this type of murder, they will pick their victims at random and on the spot, so they don't like comb out the place or like stalk the person for a long time. They do this because they have zero social skills to persuade the victim. Like Ted Bundy, he had like a very great personality, so he like persuaded a lot of women to come with him inside his car. Sometimes the victim can also be someone that's very close with them because this person already trusts them, and like if you already trust someone, you're faster to go with them and like maybe go back to their house. This in disorganized murder, they don't plan anything. The killer just goes outside with the thought of killing someone in their mind. That is their only plan. The method of killing can change over time because they have no plan. Maybe one time they will strangle them, maybe one time they will shoot them. They will just see what is the best option for them in that moment, and sometimes that option is not even a good option. They also tend to overkill, and with overkill they mean that they give the person that they are killing more blows than needed, maybe like 2 shots and the person is dead, and maybe you will give the person 15 shots just to overkill. And they also tend to disturb the victim after death, so maybe like assault the body after the person already passed away, or perform necrophilia. Necrophilia means having sex with a dead body. They also try to depersonalize the victim, and what depersonalize is just making them like be an object, not even a person anymore. They're also sloppy with trying to cover up the crime. They maybe would just like dig a hole and put the person inside and not even cover it properly. And most time, a disorganized murderer gets caught easier and faster because of it. And now the organized murder. In an organized murder, the person will likely have a victim type that can be race, sex, or age limited. So like Jeffrey Dahmer, he had black young men. John Wayne Gacy had little boys, and Ted Bundy had women. So they all had different victim types that they liked. They like to have control and like killing the victim with the way that has always worked for them. So like let's say shooting works for them, they will keep shooting the person, or like strangling the person, they will keep strangling their victims. Unlike disorganized murder, they improve on their mistakes and change their MOs. The person who uses the type of method of killing sometimes will use a kit. So I know one killer, I forgot his name, he used a rape kit, and one other killer, he had a bus with all his tools, and he rode around and killed people like that. So that can just help him to succeed with his murder. An organized murderer, unlike a disorganized murder, has 3 types of crime scenes. A disorganized murder, in that type of murder, they most likely murder, meet, and kill or dismember the person in the same place. And in an organized murder, they have 3 type of crime scenes: one where the victim met the murderer, one where the victim was killed, and one where the victim was buried. This type of murder is often met with a crime scene that has been cleaned, so it's harder for the police to track them, because in an organized murder, they think about every step that they take. Now I'm gonna give the microphone to Navaani, and she's gonna start with the different types of serial killers.
Visionary killer. This type of serial killer kills because they believe a person, an entity, is commanding them to kill. Most often these killers are disorganized, which means they don't plan who they kill. It can be very sudden. They often have problems with differentiating reality with something that is not there. That is because these types of serial killers are suffering from something called psychosis. Psychosis is when someone loses some contact with reality. This might involve seeing or hearing things that other people cannot see or hear. Hallucination. and believing things that are not actually true. Delusions. They most likely don't have a specific victim type. Their crimes can be seen as random.
And now, mission oriented killers. This type of killer is someone who murders a particular group of people to get rid, with quotation marks, of their kind. They think by doing that, they are doing a favor for society. A mission oriented serial killer is fixated with a group of people, as we have said before. These people can range in gender, race, religion, and or sexuality. In retrospect, with the visionary killer, they are not sent by an entity. They know what they are doing, and they made the decision by themselves. They are not suffering from any type of psychosis. This serial killer tends to be organized. At some of these killers, they hate the group of people they are targeting. They also tend to put distance between themselves and their victims. They don't prolong the killing to get enjoyment out of it, so the crime scene will not contain any indication of torture or sadism. They just kill to kill. And sadism is the enjoyment or pleasure of inflicting pain to an individual. And that was mission oriented killer.
And third, hedonistic killer. A hedonistic serial killer kills for the pleasure obtained from the act of killing. They can be driven by sex, the thrill of the kill, or money. Those are the three motives of a hedonistic serial killer. We are going to divide these motives in three sections.
So the next type of killer is a lust killer, and this is basically someone who just kills for the sexual gratification that they get out of it. Some of the most common things that they will do to the victim is raping, torturing, and then mutilating them, all in the name of sexual gratification. Yeah, I think Jeffrey Dahmer is a very good example of this because he would rape and torture his victims and also take apart their bodies, mutilating them. Yeah, with a lust killer, it often comes to a point where they think about it so much that the impulse they get to actually do it to someone is just unbearable. Lust killers often prefer to have very close contact with their victims, and instead of using a gun or something, they will most likely use their hands or a knife because it makes it feel more like an intimate moment to them. Yeah, a lust killer, their crimes don't have to involve sexual intercourse because just the intimacy of killing is enough for them. It already fulfills their sexual gratification. Yeah, a lust killer also tends to take trophies from their victims, such as keeping personal belongings, like for example, a necklace, a watch. But this can also go as far to literally keeping body parts after killing the victim. Jeffrey Dahmer actually kept some of the skulls of the victims.
Yeah, he kept sexual organs of people and their heads and stuff and their arms. It was disgusting.
Yeah, it was gross to read about it. Yeah. Oftentimes these lust killers also have necrophilic tendencies and sometimes even partake in it, which is pretty gross.
The second type of hedonistic killer is a thrill killer. A thrill killer is someone who gets a certain thrill in killing people. They like to see the fear in people's eyes that gives them the high they need. In other words, the suffering of their victims excites them, also known as sadism, which we talked about before. Sadism refers to experiencing pleasure in seeing others suffer or inflicting suffers on others. Sadist individuals enjoy cruelty and seek opportunities to induce suffering upon others. The act itself excites them. They seek power and adequacy, particularly if they get away with the murder. They have a feeling of invincibility, like no one can stop them. They may torture their victims just to see how it feels, and they love to see a reaction out of the victim. But even sometimes they don't see reactions from the victims, and that really makes them mad, and it can result in them torturing the victim more. Contact with the victim is not always necessary. After that, this type of killer will most likely lose interest in the victim after the high, with quotation marks, is over, because he can't get a reaction of there anymore.
Okay, then we have the third type of hedonistic killer. That's the comfort killer. A comfort killer is a person who kills for material profit. For example, the killer could have a spouse with a lot of money. A comfort killer will kill their spouse if they are beneficiary of their spouse to collect the properties and the money they leave behind once they pass away. They don't prolong the killing. They want to make a quick ending to it. This type of serial killer is also the oldest and least complicated type of serial killer.
So basically, a comfort killer is kind of a gold digger.
Gold digger.
So the last type of killer is a power killer. And this is basically someone who murders other people to show dominance, I guess, and feel like they have a lot of power, even though they might not have it in their like real life, I guess. This type of killer is not really motivated by lust or material gain as discussed for the previous types of killers, but they sometimes can still like sexually abuse their victims, even though they don't really do it for the sexual gratification or whatever. So this killer uses assault as a tool to like feel in control, and they purely just do it because they want to take away their feeling of powerlessness and feeling like they're not enough. Murdering someone gives them the feeling of being empowered, and it's basically just the act of dominating someone and taking away their free choice that turns them on and makes them want to continue killing. Even after their victims have passed away, they sometimes still want to have control and show dominance over the person, even though they're dead.
Like maybe with Jeffrey Dahmer, when he was trying to keep them like half alive by putting acid into people's heads to make like zombies.
Yeah, so they might go back to the body and like mutilate the corpse or perform necrophilia. And yeah, they might even keep souvenirs like Jeffrey Dahmer did, because it makes them remind themselves of their victims and they will feel more in control.
So here, to make it more easier for you guys, I have a short summary of the types of serial killers. So the first one is a visionary. It believes that a person or entity is commanding him to kill, most likely suffering from psychosis. Second, mission oriented, kills in order to get rid of a certain group in society. Hedonistic, commits his acts for his own personal pleasure, for example, rape, torture, or money. Power control, fantasizes about having power and seeks to dominate and control his victims. And all these types of victims can also, of course, overlap. Talk about the 7 psychological phases of a serial killer. So a psychologist named Joel Norris interviewed tons of serial killers during the 1980s. With these interviews, he came to a conclusion that serial killers have psychological phases. With psychological phases, we mean a stage in development of life. Mr. Norris has divided these phases in 7 types of categories: the aura phase, the trolling phase, the wooing phase, the capturing phase, the murdering phase, the totem phase, and the depression phase. In this section, we're going to explain what these type of phases actually mean. So first, we have the aura phase. In the aura phase, the person might retreat from society. He will put distance between them and their social relations. They will stop socializing with their acquaintances, maybe even drift from reality. Maybe their psychosis will begin, and they will begin to obsessively fantasize about violence in general, sexual violence, or revenge. During this period, their aura will change. For example, he might come off as uninterested, detached, or half-hearted in social interactions. Real-world commitments may seem less important to them. Former ambitions or goals may come to a standstill, so they might stop going to college, or they might stop coming to work every single day. They also might partake in the usage of drugs and alcohol or any other mind-altering substances. If this person is suffering from psychosis, the drugs and alcohol can make it even worse. The phase ends when it results in actually committing the crime and their thoughts finally becoming reality. After the aura phase comes the trolling phase. During the trolling phase, the offenders begins to put their plan into action. They will start trying to find victims and scope out areas that are suitable for them. A serial killer will like to stay in their comfort zone, especially organized killers because they know all the places and the sneaky alleyways. Close from home, but not too close, so it doesn't like ring bells too fast with the police. Nowadays, it can be even easier for them using a tool called the internet. For example, through dating sites and or social media platforms. I also know a lot of cases where offenders find their victims through social media, and a lot of young people use social media, so a lot of their victim types are young people. So the person is searching for a victim that's most suitable for them. They have to be vulnerable and easy to reach because it's like easier for them than something that's very hard, of course. If during this phase the killer is organized, he might have four main areas that he will scope out. One being the area they abduct their victim, one where they murder the victim and sexual assault them, one that where they mutilate the body, and one where they hide the body. The killer may stalk a potential target and figure out their routine. They might scope out their victim's home in order to identify any risk and opportunities. In this phase, the killer may find out what works best for them. And when they find out that what works best for them, they will most likely stick to it if it's an organized killer and an organized murder. After the trolling phase, the wooing flirting phase will begin. It's a psychological phase where the offender tries to gain the trust and persuade a victim by falling into their trap. The process of gaining their trust can consist of pleasant and engaging conversations, compliments, gifts, promises, or any action that will help the killer succeed in their quest of gaining the trust of the victim. If the victim knows the offender, it's more easier to gain their trust because you already know them. And like Ted Bundy, he did not really know the woman that he killed, but he had a very good and great personality. Like a lot of the women said that it was just easy to talk to him. Typically, disorganized killers will skip this step because they lack social skills. They usually just go for ambush attacks. Ambush attacks are just fast attacks or just breaking someone's home without knowing them. And organized killers can also skip this step if they deem that it's not necessary. For example, breaking into one's home and attacking them in their sleep because you don't need no persuading if you're attacking someone in their sleep.
Okay, next we have the capturing phase. In this phase, the killer makes their first move. They switch from their nice personality and show their true intentions. It can be a slow or quick process, where they switch from the flirting, wooing phase to the capturing phase. They will try to immobilize their victim, to eventually overpower them. It can be in the form of restraining them, making them unconscious, or holding them at gunpoint. After the killer has achieved this part, he may, if he is an organized killer, go to a secluded area that he scoped out in the trolling phase. Disorganized killers are more likely to immediately kill their victim. That brings us to the next phase, the murdering phase.
As said in the name, the murdering phase is the phase where the victim gets killed. Some of them are so eager to inflict suffering, like the power control serial killer, that he often bring the victims to the brink of death, only to end the torture and allow the victims to at least partially recover. Once he recovers, the killer will start tormenting again. The cycle of torture and recovery can continue countless times before the serial killer finally murders his victims. Disorganized killers will almost immediately kill the victim. They also are more likely to perform necrophilia. Necrophilia is the act of having sexual encounters with a deceased person and depersonalizing the victim. It typically consists of mutilation of the victim's body and face, so making them unrecognizable. For some of the killers, the killing of the victim is only a tool to help them cover up their crime. They actually only want to mutilate, torture, assault, or sexual assault the victim, but they are scared that the victim will go to the authorities about them. So they murder them, so the chance of them being ratted out to the authorities becomes slimmer to none.
Okay, after the murdering phase comes the totem phase. The totem phase is called to the totem phase because a totem is an item that represents something. In this case, it depicts the victim. In the totem phase, the killer will try to find something by which he can remember the murder by. They realize that their fantasy is over and will become disappointed. So, in effort to get this high feeling back, they will try to take a souvenir or a trophy from the victim. For example, they can take a piece of body, clothing, undergarments, and jewelry. Or sometimes they will take pictures and videos of their crimes so they can rewatch and relive it.
So after the totem phase, um, the high feeling that the killer might have kind of goes away, which causes them to fall into a sort of deep depression because they have to come to terms with the fact that killing is not reality. Like, it happened, but it should not be the way they should be living their lives, and that they cannot be, like, cannot keep living in the fantasies that they have, and that it just did not give them the long term satisfaction that they were hoping to get. Like, it might make them feel good on short term, but on long term it just is not what they were hoping for. After the depression phase, three things can happen. It can either be that the feeling of killing someone will never like live up to their expectations anymore. This can this can lead to strong feelings of hopelessness, disappointment, and a failure, which might make them fall into a deeper depression and causes the killer to eventually take their own life, basically commit suicide. It can also be that these feelings will eventually go away and the killer might try to do it again to see what he can do differently. And yeah, this will bring them back to the aura phase and make the cycle repeat itself. And the last option is that the cycle will be broken by either getting arrested, dying, by being sick, or being like getting old, or just basically simply realizing that murdering is not for them.
And now the last sub question. How does someone's upbringing come into play? In this chapter, we are going to discuss how different circumstances change how this person thinks about killing another individual and what may result from it. Trauma is a theme that comes to play in many of these serial killers' cases. They never learn how to appropriately respond to trauma they have been through. They find it hard to empathize with others because they didn't have the space to develop the correct emotions due to their trauma. Us as people want to make sense of serial killers. It makes us feel safer and perhaps as a society less guilty. There's a debate going on in the criminologist world whether criminals act the way they act due to some predisposed condition, which we call nature. Navaani is going to explain us later what that means, or because of how certain things have unfolded in these people's lives, which we call nurture. Navaani again is going to explain us later what that means. First, we will explain to you what the difference is between nature and nurture. After that, we will discuss what big experiences in a serial killer's lives affects them to become who they became. We separated these experiences and circumstances in 4 different categories: the link between serial killers and head trauma, the McDonald triad, abuse, and loneliness.
Okay, now I'm going to explain nature versus nurture. Nature is what we think of as pre-wiring, and it refers to our genetics and genetic inheritance. Like we inherit the eye color or hair color from our parents, it has led some to theorize that if we inherit physical
Characteristics, what will make us not inherit psychological characteristics from our parents?
such as behavioral tendencies, personality traits, and mental abilities. Okay, and now nurture. Nurture is thinking that we as human beings are born with something called a blank slate, and that this blank slate gradually gets filled when we experience something or are exposed to something. The way you are brought up can alter your psychologically. For example, it's generally known that you don't curse around children because they will imitate you. Nurture is generally taken as the influence of external factors after conception, the product of exposure, life experiences, and learning on an individual.
Thank you, Navaani, for explaining us nature versus nurture. And now I'm going to explain you guys the link between serial killers and head trauma. In a lot of cases we come across, the killer has some type of brain damage or brain injury, and specifically in the frontal lobes. The frontal lobes control our behavior and emotions, and that's the place where we form our personality. Damaging your frontal lobes can result in a lot of symptoms, and the most important ones for this section are change in social behavior, change in personality, and mood fluctuations. Because of the damage that happened in the frontal lobes, the person will have a hard time controlling their emotions, especially their emotion anger, which may or may not lead them to make such a decision, and with the decision being killing someone. The reality is that a brain injury can perhaps contribute, but cannot cause a person to become a serial killer. They would have been predisposed to the behavior, perhaps fantasizing about the crime, and there's no way to tell if it was the physical changes to the brain that then caused the behavior, or if it was some aspect of the stay in the hospital, recovery, etc. that was a triggering event. And now the McDonald triad. The McDonald triad, also known as the triad of psychopathy and the homicidal triad, proposed by a psychiatrist, John McDonald, in the Threat to Kill, a 1963 article in the American Journal of Psychiatry. He theorized that certain behaviors like animal abuse, starting random fires, and non-stop bedwetting could predict that the child would grow up and commit violent criminal offenses. The triad links these factors to violent behaviors, in particularly homicidal behaviors and sexual predatory behavior. But some studies claim that the triad and violent offenders have no statistically significant link. They claim that these behaviors are linked to childhood experience and physical and emotional abuse by the caretaker of the child. The triad even has been called an urban legend. And now for the other circumstance abuse. You have different types of abuse. The first one being physical abuse. That is intentionally causing injury or trauma to another person by physical contact. The second type of abuse is sexual abuse. Sexual behavior or sexual act forced upon a woman, man, or child without their consent. The third being emotional abuse. That is controlling some by using emotions to embarrass, shame, frighten, criticize, blame, or manipulate another person. And the fourth and the last being neglectfulness, to not give enough care or attention to people or things that are your responsibility. Childhood abuse is a factor that has come prominent in the media and around psychologists, fueled by the claims that many serial killers suffered from abuse at the hands of their own parental figures. There is a heightened risk associated with childhood trauma and antisocial behaviors for personality disorders and criminal activity in the later adult life. But there's evidence that shows that not all victims of child abuse will become criminal offenders themselves. Because of this abuse, children can develop something called trauma. Trauma is the lasting emotional response that often results from living through a traumatic event. It can harm someone's sense of self, safety, and the ability to control their emotions and navigate relationships. It can make them feel shame, helplessness, intense fear, or give them the feeling that they are weak. Thank you for listening to episode 1 of PodCrime. And see you guys next episode. Bye.
Bye.